A very good
Yes.
evening to one and all. It gives me immense pleasure to accord a very warm greetings and welcome to all the audience. ISPIL, uh, that is Indigenous Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature, was born on 5th of September 2020, which was, of course, the darkest period in the history of mankind. And that was a period when everything came to a standstill, and even the educational institution was the more affected due to the lockdown imposed on them. And in this dark phase, iceberg came as a rainbow, as a silver lining in the dark cloud, and ever since it has moved on with its flagship program, Journey 114 Sunday Sahityik Satsangs. And not only that, it has catered to the various needs of the academicians, research scholars, students, and various people who are interested in English language and literature. With its various programs in collaboration as well as independently, including FDPs, Sunday Sahityik Satsang, seminars, webinars, value-added courses, and a variety of other such events. Striving hard to reach the unreached and to bring the marginalized to the center, making every effort to elevate, facilitate, and elevate people. And today we are here to do the same. And behind this whole show, it was not an easy job, is a visionary, a man who, it is his visionary mission with which it was possible to achieve so much within such a short period. And that man we all know as Professor G. A. Ghanshyam. So the crowning glory of this success of ISPIL goes to him. And of course, his team. So today we are organizing an event that is on Saturday Intellectual Meet. And the event coordinator is very important in every event. And the person whom we have as an event coordinator is no one but Dr. Neelu Srivastava. Neelu Srivastava is working as an assistant professor in English in the Department of English at Government Digvijay Autonomous PG College, Rajnandgaon. A doctorate in English, she has a specialization in Shakespearean literature. She has the experience of 28 years of teaching UG and PG classes. She has to her credit 3 books and a number of research articles published in various national and international journals of repute. She is a member of Chhattisgarh English Teachers Association, and she's also a member, active member of ISPEL as well. And she has chaired many sessions. She has been a chief speaker also. And today she's here to coordinate the event. She has also been a member of Board of Studies in various panels of various institutes. And she has worked as an IQAC coordinator.
Am I audible, ma'am?
8
Yes,
years.
ma'am. Hello? Yes, ma'am.
As a research guide, she has 3 research scholars working for doctorate degree under her guidance. And she is another feather in her cap is her melodious and sonorous voice. She's a marvelous singer, and everyone is enthralled by her singing. So she's the nightingale of ISPIL as well. So such a persona we have with us today. Over to you, ma'am, for the further proceedings.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this beautiful introduction to me. I don't know whether I deserve it or not. Thank you, ma'am. Uh, a very warm evening to one and all present here. With all my due regards to our esteemed speaker for today, Dr. Shishirkana Bhattacharya, Dr. Harpreet Kaur Garcha ma'am,
Hello.
uh, other office bearers, dignitaries, and research scholars, students, and all participants present over here. I, Dr. Neelu Srivastava, the coordinator of this event, welcome you all in today's Saturday Intellectual Meet. The speaker for today is Dr. Shishirkana Bhattacharya. She's a very well-known speaker of Chhattisgarh, and she is assistant professor in District Institute for Education and Training, that is DIET Durg. Her topic today for deliverance is narratives, the pathway to constructive assessment in language and literature. As we all know, that assessment or evaluation is a very significant area in teaching and learning process. Accurate evaluation carves the future of the learner. Dr. Bhattacharya's talk today deals with exploiting written text or narratives through constructive approach so as to help learners to analyze the organic nature of the content, the information and linguistic interpretation of the text, and the appreciation of the text from the authors, the societies, and the cultural point of view. I'm sure her peroration today is going to enlighten all of us and all our research scholars and students. Now, I would like to invite the moderator of the event, Mr. Satyavir Singh Rathod, who is a very able research scholar in Government Digvijay Autonomous PG College, Rajnandgaon, and he is pursuing his doctorate research work under my guidance. Presently, he is an assistant professor at GD Rumta College of Science and Technology. He has 3 years of teaching experience in Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya and 4 years of experience in college teaching. In addition, he also has an experience of basic and advanced mountaineering courses under the Government of India. And also, he is qualified for the Everest climbing, which is a very unusual inclination, Satyaveer. And I was not knowing this untouched aspect of your personality. Our
Thank you,
best
ma'am.
wishes,
Thank you, ma'am.
yeah, our best wishes to you, Satyaveer, for your further ventures in mountaineering. And now I hand over the platform to Satyaveer for further proceedings of this event. So now over to Satyaveer.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am, for introducing me. Good evening to all. It's my honor to get this opportunity to introduce our esteemed speaker of the day, Dr. Sisirkana Bhattacharya, ma'am. She is an assistant professor of District Institute for Education and Training. She began in 1988 as a lecturer of English at Government Higher Secondary School, Kavarda, and completed her diploma in teaching English from Barkatullah University at Bhopal in 1991. Then she joined Hands of Teacher Training and she was posted at DC Jabalpur in 1996. Journey through teacher training fostered at IAAC Bilaspur for almost 17 years from 1997 to 2014. Also served at SCRT Raipur from 2014 to 2016 and joined the new diet at Dul since then. and presently working on new education policy and state curriculum framework and a capacity building of school teachers at all levels. Her major area of interest is textbook writing and research. So now I'm welcome Dr. Sisir Kanna Bhattacharya ma'am for enhancing our knowledge. Welcome ma'am.
पापा जी बैठ बनिए
Uh, Hello, Dr. Bhattacharya.
Ma'am, she is now muted.
No,
No,
no, no.
sir.
She is here. She is here, but her window is muted. Let me call. Let me. She's just joining again due to some calls. Actually, she was. Um, she had left the call maybe. Okay, now she's joining again.
audible Satya
Yes, ma'am.
Satyaveer, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Let my video be off. Right. Okay. Right. Thank you so much.
Ma'am,
Uh,
for some time, can you
huh.
on your video? Open your video, ma'am.
Right.
Yes, she's there. Yes, ma'am. You are visible as well as audible now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. So
You're welcome, ma'am.
Let us straight away go. I extend my warm greetings and to everyone on this platform. Dr. Anita Shankar and Ghamshyam. Yes. And everyone else who very affectionately invited me to this
Thank you,
platform
ma'am.
to do. But still, I'd like to talk about, and that's what I thought was across this curriculum. There are many assignments which are left untouched. Assessment is one of the areas which doesn't have much access to in terms of teacher training or in terms of classroom teaching as well. Now, when I talk about assessment, before I begin on the topic, I would like to draw your attention to um, three, four issues. I should say. First of all, when we come to language teaching, we talk about LSRW: listening, speaking, reading, writing. Well, four skills. When we are taking this as an agenda into assessment, we say that listening and speaking are the skills which are really assessed on the examination platforms because they are time taking, because they have their own marking systems, and also they are very subjective. Uh, as far as assessment is concerned, most of it is reading and writing, but we are not in the habit Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible? Right. No?
Yes, ma'am, you
You
are
are
audible.
audible, ma'am.
You are audible, ma'am.
Yes. Right. So the second thing is we tend to we tend to take our classes in with reference to textbooks. Textbooks are our major tools, the major handlings. And when we are talking in terms of assessment, the textbook deliverance is a one-way method, is a one-way process in our classroom teaching, especially at the undergraduate level. And at the postgraduate level, again, interaction is minimized. We can always see that there are hardly questions in our classrooms. The third thing is when we talk about question papers, we also have an issue where we say that we as teachers tend to select some of the things, some of the options, some of the questions which are very close to the students. They have an access to it, they have an understanding of the last year's papers or the mode of assessment that is already on, and there is no challenge given to the students in terms of language or literature, in terms of language and literature with reference to their skills and their competencies that are getting developed during the course of their learning. The fourth thing is there are areas, there are ways where the assessment could be continuous. The assessment could be a kind of a profile maintaining system, and the assessment could also be more of a creative process, which is really neglected in our educational forum. So, when we talk about narratives, like if we say that textbook is our major tool, maybe narratives is one of the best. The second slide, the nature and scope of narratives. Now, narratives show patterns and relate them to one another to specific ideas or themes. And when they are non-fiction books that are informative, narrative texts provide plots, characters, settings, and conflict. Well, these are the areas where a narrative can be, in which the narrative exposes the learners to in the phase of teaching, learning, and interaction. Now, when it is a book, when it's a textbook, when it's a piece of literature, if the child reads or the learner reads, whether it's at school level or at undergraduate level, with the minimum competence that the child has, the written narrative is a kind of simple comprehension exercise to the child, to the learner. That comprehension takes care of the qualities of a written narrative in terms of vocabulary, in terms of grammar, in terms of linguistics, culture, and some ethical issues which all that authentic text has to deliver. The next thing that the narratives tells us, as a story, as an account, as a fairy tale, or as a piece of a novel, as a poem, it has a progress of events, a sequence of characters, and also some kind of accessories which allow us to see that the narrator is close to our experiences in daily life, or it's alien and unfamiliar in cultural context or in the context of use of vocabulary or language also. The next thing that the narrative writing includes is the kind of genre, the kind of style or rhetorics it handles. So we have descriptions, viewpoints, historical descriptions, and linear and non-linear narratives also, which means that there are different ways of helping the learner to see whether the learner can ask questions to himself or herself while he or she is handling the text. Well, let's come to the next. And if we see the intentions of the narrative text, now we can see that the descriptive narratives have settings, and there's an insight into the way the plot is delivered, the writing is delivered. There is a detailed picture for the writer to visualize, in fact, and that visualization is in terms of words or illustrations. In some cases, there are images which the narrator is trying to get used to or is trying to get familiarized with, and there are also some instincts which move with the language of the narrative, and there comes the role of the assessment. And here it's the teacher who alone, and the teacher alone, can actually make a space for the learner to find out whether he or she can handle the description in his or her own way, or is it actually what the child or the learner is understanding, actually what the author is trying to develop, that the child or the learner is understanding. Right? So in kind of in case of descriptive narratives, the setting I think Madam has some
Mm,
network problem.
there is some network problem or the yeah.
Okay.
I'm just calling her. Somehow she had left. She did not know that she is not there. I have told her that you have left. So now I don't know. It's some network issue or she's joining now. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. I don't know what's happening.
yeah. Suddenly you had left. Maybe some technical
Yeah,
issue was there.
I'm on with
Yes, ma'am. Please
I,
continue. Please
I'm
continue. It's
speaking
okay.
on my own.
It's
Continue.
fine. Yeah, yeah. Please, please.
Right. Uh, the viewpoint. Yeah, the viewpoint has its own. The viewpoint of the author or the narrator has its own space for assessment where we can ask questions. For example, I was talking about Alice in Wonderland. Suppose Lewis Carroll, and there are areas, there are conditions in which Alice, as a narrator, has many things to tell us and leave to the reader queries that go with her or they don't. For example, when she says that, well, she is talking to the mouse and she kept on puzzling about it when the mouse was speaking, and her idea was that there's a there's a way where the mouse, there's a small poem which is written in the form of a snake, like Fury said to a mouse that he met in the house, let's both go to law, I will prosecute you, come, I'll take no denial, we must have a trial, for really this morning I have nothing to do, and so on. Now the point is, if Alice is speaking to a mouse and she is speaking about law, she is speaking about prosecution. There are two areas. There are two things that get merged into each other. Though this is fantasy, and there are many small interventions which might look not very logical while the reader reads, but There is every time the teacher who has as a facilitator, who has an intervention to ask questions, to ask for finding issues. For example, if the teacher asks the reader to find out why is this poem written in the form of a tale, and how does this issue of going to law arise in this at this point in the mind of Alice. Now, this kind of a question will certainly bring into view the reader's reader's tendency to, the reader is forced to an imposition, though it's not, it might not be very welcome, but we need to do this, because if there's an imposition to go back to the text again to find the answer to such kind of queries, where some inquisitiveness, some curiosity, and some beyond text thinking is required, then things are managed in a better way in terms of assessment. Let's come to the next point. If we say historical narratives, there are examples like Into the Wild by John Krakauer and 1776 McCullough. And then these are the these are narratives which talk about nature of time period. Why nature of time period? Because culture, ethics, and connectedness in connectedness in a particular point of time or contemporary issues can also be one of the areas of assessment which is ignored. This contemporariness has to be developed has to be cultivated into the reader. For example, if I take myself, I have not been in touch with literature as such, or appreciation of literature as such, for quite a long period, when it's all teacher training, so it's all language, it's all about developing the four skills, so things have slowly faded out. But if we say that the author's interpretation, the author's intention, and the reader's interpretation work, then I need to get to such areas where contemporariness in my insight and the author's point of view actually is put to a comparative ideology in front of me. Unless that comparison is exposed to me, I don't get that inquisitiveness. The next thing is the next slide, please. And if we the next slide, please.
Archana ma'am, please
If we go to
forward the slide.
the intentions of the narrative dress, and the next slide is about linear narratives. We need this difference, because linear narratives and non-linear narratives are not generally out. Pointed out with these these labels. These tell, then when the linear narratives are talked about, they have an insight to tell us some feeling, some sorrow, some autobiographical element, or some event concern, some events that show concern towards a longitudinal psychological ability of the learner. Assessment here again talks about finding words, finding phrases, finding grammatical patterns which grow which make things more, which grow complex from simple. For example, if we read Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl, we will find that Anne starts with simple memories. The sentences are simple in the beginning. They are compound at the most. But as she goes on with her saddened thoughts, as she gets intensified with what happened to the family and the circumstances, she uses more complex sentences. This kind of an appreciation about literary paradigm shifts has to be brought into the notice of the learner. This is possible only through assessment, where queries have to be put, maybe in terms of MCQs, maybe in terms of very short answer questions, not longish descriptive kind of subjective answers that we are used to in our literature evaluations. But these MCQs or short answer questions will also reveal that the linearity of these texts, the kind of longitudinal approach of the writer, which is sometimes shared or sometimes not shared, this appreciation has to be developed, has to be cultivated in the reader. The reader should understand that the kind of phrases or words or language patterns that are used in a very closed arena might not affect creativity in a larger circle. And this then gives an insight into the learner about non-linear narratives, which takes our creativity back to things like cinematography, directions of in theaters, into art integrated learning, into making of advertisements, into drawing illustrations. I would like to recall Rabindranath Tagore's comment on this in this connection. At Shanti Niketan, at a seminar with some of the I don't know whether I remember the name, some of Japanese illustrators. Tagore once said that when I write, you can see my manuscripts. My writings are many unclear many a times. I drag, I scribble, I destroy my papers, and within that I create pictures. So when I create my illustrations come out of those scribblings many a times. But his illustrations, Tagore's illustrations in his creations are very original. And when these originalities are taken care of through words, we can see that they are irreplaceable. They cannot be replaced. When this kind of discrimination is understood by the author himself, author's identity is revealed through these things, the non-linearness of the text is understood by the reader also, but not without questions or interventions from the teacher. Here I would like to also take into account that this is actually what is constructivism in language learning and teaching, in language and literature, I should say. When it is language learning and teaching, there are several known issues. We know, like when we teach in our classrooms, we say, if we come to the next slide, we can say that we can see that there are, next slide, ma'am. The next slide talks about ELL. If you can see, I don't know whether it's visible, the programs for ELL. ELL means English language learners, and this is considered mandatory, that we have a transitional bilingual education for students whose mother tongue, whose native language is not English. Here we say that English language, the Cummins and Smith, Johnson, these are some of the linguists who have monitored that the maintenance of bilingual education through earlier grades up to maybe at high school level or even further, bilingualism is much acceptable. No code switchings can be denied, and the code switchings may not be very proficient. For example, if I take my own example, I'm a Bangla speaker. If I if I get a call in between from my relatives, I'll respond in Bangla. I immediately come back and speak to you in Hindi. And if I come back to my classroom, I start speaking in English. This code switching is as a language teacher is a welcome situation in terms of assessment also. But we need to see that English as a second language needs to first cater to mainstreaming. And one of the basic objectives of assessment is mainstreaming. Mainstreaming through what? Mainstreaming through understanding how language can be assessed in terms of language can be assessed in terms of interest, in terms of thematic interpretation, in terms of uh, conditioning, or I should say the adaptations of the learner, and in terms of knowledge. When we come to constructivism, we say that optimal learning in constructivism is through assessment. The next slide, please. And here we can see, the next slide, please. Here we can see that there is an information construct and a knowledge construct. One of the basic things, the next slide on optimal learning. We can skip this one. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So one of the basic things that we need to know about constructivism. Let us take it very plainly. Constructivism is an approach which is more welcome in science. Why? Because when we say construct, we see the elements of development, the elements of continuous theoretical or cognitive progress, and we also see a logical connection between events or occurrences or phenomena. For example, I got this, I came to learn it by my classroom teaching actually. When we have our B.Ed students who go for classroom teaching, and there someone was teaching volcano. Someone was taking a geography class, and he or she was teaching. She was teaching volcano. Now, when it was volcano, we see lava comes out of the volcano. She was talking about what is lava, how lava comes out, what is core, what is the temperature inside the volcano, and so on. And the children, they were class 9 children, perhaps. Yes. So they simply listened, and they said, "Madam, why lava? Is lava the same state inside always?" Then they also said, what does lava become when it comes out? Then they also said, they asked, that why is lava in that state inside? And is it always there anywhere? Can we have a volcano anywhere? Now see, these are actually constructs of science, of content-based learning. Whenever it's a content subject, we have an access to such kind of questions because we try to think on that content logically. We try to justify our ideas, our experiences with that thing along with the theory. Now we don't see volcanoes around, so these questions are very obvious. But again, if we ask, well, somebody's father is working in a coal mine. He finds gaseous openings there. Fire bursts out very often there, and things happen in that turmoil. That gaseous turmoil is often there inside too. Why does the coal mine not break out into a lava, into a volcano? What is the difference between a coal mine inner process, earth core process, and a volcanic earth core process? This is constructivism in science. does this actually happen when we come to language and literature teaching? Constructivism is an untouched area in language and literature because the paradigm shift into construct of knowledge has to be seen here in terms of creativity or originality. If that is taken into account, so we can see that sciences, humanities, social sciences, mathematics, demography, statistics, economics, medicine, these come into information construct. And when it is knowledge or creativity construct, it caters to history, sociology, languages, psychology, human rights, culture, etc. What I mean to say is the interdisciplinary consistency of teaching languages and literature has to be taken care of through assessments here. Unless I have qualitative evidences about psychological features that go with a narrative, the constructiveness in language teaching does not come up. Let's come to the next slide. Come to the scope for using narratives. And we can see the language part. We have passive skills, listening and reading, which is to be assessed through higher order thinking and cognitive synthesis. Now, listening to an audio, to a song, to an audio excerpt, or watching a film. Through a review that is done on a film, whether it's written or oral or simple questions after a film is shown to a group of students, could be a very marginalized process or could be a mainstream process. Suppose it is mainstream. How do we mark it? How do we assess our child that the child is actually able to interpret that film or that audio excerpt in terms of development of skill in listening, in terms of development of skill of reproduction, that is speaking, and in terms of using some original vocabulary to interpret what he has heard, what he has actually had an access to. Now, when this cognitive synthesis is taken into account, we have a graded way to approach it. When we have a text where a child can just listen to a small excerpt of a small dialogue between two people, that dialogue, if there are imaginary spaces in that dialogue, for example, suppose we have a dialogue between a person at a teller counter in a bank and a customer. And in this excerpt, in this conversation, if the customer has several queries, has several doubts as to how to approach, how to fill up a form, how to withdraw money or make a fixed deposit. If some kind of query like that he has, the person has to speak some sentences. A kind of deliverance has been given to the reader. He has heard it. He or she has heard it. Next time, when we ask, suppose this person was blind or this person couldn't see, how would the person at the teller help him? Now, here the assessment is not alone language. The assessment has cognitive synthesis, the assessment has psychological aspects, the assessment has its own affective, emotional attachments, which will take care of coinages or words that the customer would like to come up with. This imparting in terms of the learner will take into account most of the emergent skills also. So when it is productive skills like writing, the organicness can be seen like you can see the originality. When we talk about divergent production ability, or we talk about creativity tests, we talk about 3-4 aspects, like we say fluency, flexibility, and originality. Fluency means number of words that the number of words that the learner can come up with. The learner can produce as many number of words as he or she can. When we come to flexibility, the ideas that those words try to process. For example, if I say, what is the use of a pencil? And somebody says writing, drawing, sketching, shading, then all these things are the use of the lead, the different use of the lead of the pencil, and this is counted as one in flexibility. So flexibility means the ideas have to spread further. So if I say my pencil can be used as a hairpin, then I give a different issue. When this is a different issue, my words change, my way of expression change, my way of thinking also changes. This is what we mean by higher order thinking in terms of assessment, where we ask a simple question, give us some uses of pencil, and you say that, well, take care that you are original and different from others. Here we see that any narrative can give us this scope. How is Alice different? How is any such a very common character? Some stories which children read from their earlier classes also. They might remember those characters. They might remember those as events. And if those narratives are taken into account for simple language assessments or literary assessments, maybe we give them better scope to understand. We have pedagogical insights which Cummins takes into account. We can skip this, and I come to a small poem. This is Excuses, Excuses by Gareth Owen. Ma'am, can we skip the slides and come to the poem Excuses, Excuses? We can see we have clippings. We have clippings
This
there.
one, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And we see that this is Jenkins of a child and a teacher. The child who, in fact, flees from his classes and is a great, what should I say? He is not at all. He is not at all in agreement to his teacher to place himself in terms of, I mean, as a good child, good student. So he has excuses every time, and he says, "Well, late again, Benkinson. See, we have the face of a teacher and as a child. Late again, Benkinson. What's the excuse this time? Not my fault, sir." So this, if we take this as a simple conversation, we can go ahead and say, whose fault is it then? Grandma, sir. Grandma? What did she do? She died, sir. Died? She's seriously dead. All right, sir. Now see, we have words, seriously dead, all right, sir. This is not, it's not my fault. These are very simple sentences which generally children use for excuses. In terms of assessment, this, if we say that, what is the intervention of the teacher in such case? If this is displayed, what is the intervention of the teacher in this case in terms of assessment? Now, when we come to a vocabulary, suppose I say the word seriously dead. Is someone lightly dead also? And there is an emphasis. All right, sir. Seriously dead. All right, sir. This use of all right is again ambiguous. Does the child address the teacher to find out whether the things are all right? I mean, whether the teacher is accepting his excuse, or he wants to make his statement more assured that my grandma is seriously dead. I'm speaking the truth. These are two aspects. Unless they are assessed through such small multiple choice or three options, questions with options, the children, the readers will never go into this angle of thinking. So the criteria of assessment has to be enlarged every time into an area where the process of thinking is changed into a transition from language to appreciation, again from appreciation to notings of how these words or patterns become very diligently original or very diligently the picked into the put into the poems, like they're pinched there. They become so inevitable that without that the poem is not enjoyable. Even otherwise, if you ask your child to creatively allow some other word into it, suppose if I say that can you replace that word, if I say how many grandmothers have you got, the next slide the teacher asks, that makes four grandmothers this term. Benkins of all on PE days, all on physical exercise days. I know it's very upsetting, sir. Now this upsettingness is not for the teacher alone. The child knows that he is upsetting the teacher. The word upsetting, its use, grammatical use, upsetting as an adjective or upsetting as an adverb, its nominal function as a language function, it's very upsetting, sir. I know it's very upsetting, sir. What kind of emphasis is being given here? Is it uh, is it the emphasis to the content, I mean to the fact that the child is delivering, or is it the way the child is trying to make the excuse established before the teacher? These are patterns which are neglected in our assessment systems. We don't find our children easy with the language, even after PG, even after undergraduates, after their graduations are over, graduation courses are over, even after they have done their MPhils and PhDs, only because the even we ourselves, many a times we hunt for words. We say that the paradigms are getting confused. We say that how can we collaborate a text like this into our culture or the our kind of expression when we don't use that language at all. But do we ever make our child think? Do we ever make our child go back to the text again and again? This going back to the text is important, and that's what I wanted to emphasize. Let's skip into this and we come into one of the one slide, which is after this conversation, which of the 15th slide, which of the following statements from the poem are true and which are false? Give reasons for your answer. And we can see that the conditions of plot, culture, setting, and conflict, which assessment in literature has, or language in higher order has to take care of, is being addressed. Benkinsop had four mothers, all of them were dead. Benkinsop's hand was aching, that is why he could not iron his kit. Benkinsop was afraid of taking the maths test, so he made an excuse. Benkinsop did not like physical education, that's why he was always late. The teacher believed that Benkinsop was telling the truth about his grandmother. There could be many other alternatives. The conflict of the child and the teacher, both, the child does not deny, the teacher does not accept. All It's a funny poem, it's a humor, it's a humorous poem, a setting which is enjoyable, but a setting which always happens, a setting which has words to pun with, and there comes the creativity. So the next slide, if you say, what excuse will you give when you do not want to visit your uncle who always asks about your studies? You do not want to take chapatis for lunch every day. You don't want to do maths homework yourself. Now, this is in compliance to the standard of the poem of the learners who take this poem. But this think test, is uh, is necessary. For example, if you ask your child to write a reason, or a statement about what will excuse will you give when you don't want to visit your uncle who always asks about your studies, there are many open organic ways which a child or the learner will write. It could be that I'll simply say I won't go there again, or it could be that, well, I want to go to my friend, I have assignments to do, I'm not feeling well. It could be as simple as this, or it could be there could be a complex of ideas where the child congregates, assimilates many of his feelings together to defend himself in this area, in this matter. Now, a test of constructivism in a literary narrative, and that was from the language point of view along with literature. I took a small excerpt from Tom Sawyer, Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and what I wanted to in fact emphasize here or bring in front of you is there are two kinds of construct when we talk about assessment. The cognitive construct, which says that there are factual happenings, factual items, which the learner can just pick and choose, and or they can simply pick them out as they read the narrative. The next point here is when it is a cognitive construct, it's also a matter of inference. For example, a question from Aunt Polly from Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Aunt Polly was trying to find out if Tom had gone for a swim, whether Tom had been to school, what was he eating, or who had come to meet Tom. Now, all these events are happening. All these events are happening somewhere sooner or later in the narrative. It's happening. Now, the point where this question is asked. Now, look at the stem of the question. It is erroneous. Is this missing? That's a typing error. That's the typological error. But Aunt Polly is trying to find out. We generally tend to ask a question like this. Aunt Polly is trying to find out at which point of the text, which point of the narrative, because all these options are happening in the text. Now, if your child is given a question like this, any of these could be answered and could be a correct answer for the learner, and all of them have to be given correct. So, the stem of the question, if it is an MCQ, how to ask a question which binds the binds the reader to correct assessment to correct interpretation of the point of event or the character that is in question. And Polly is trying to find out when Tom came home with his shirt worn out, crumpled. He tried to stretch his shirt and put it in, but it looked disturbed. So Aunt Polly was trying to interrogate whether he had gone to swim. And there are questions around that. Again, at another point, where somebody had come to meet Tom and Aunt did not want Tom to meet that boy. So at both these points, the stem has to be checked out. So if we say the cognitive construct, it is only picking on the basis of the words that guide the reader with the assessment item. So that guidance has to be narrowed down, has to be accurate, so that interpretations do not get fused. So Aunt Polly is trying to find out. Aunt Polly saw that Tom's dress or shirt was worn out. Aunt Polly is trying to find out. That should have been the stem. Now, let's say a word like the words middling warm and powerful warm refer to. Here its vocabulary. The reader has to go back to the text. Also would need to say that the text has to be checked out with a dictionary, right? So there, the reader's intervention with the narrative is taken into account with a diligent attempt in terms of the teacher. Now, when we say that we are progressing into cognitive construct, we will also find out that the construct makes it certain that the school or the determinant that is being assessed is very firm. For example, if it is an excerpt from a conversation, the spoken aspects in terms of language used, in terms of alienness of language, and in terms of sentence patterns have to be identified. If it is cultural, the collaborative, the intensity of alienness will go back to images, or will go back to such words which talk about the characters and their endurance with the society. Let's come to the next. After that, we have a community construct. And when it's a community, there are words which take care of affective domains like emotions, moods, psychological impacts, and words that also say that that also check the moral or values in the characters of that narrative. Here, assessment could be subjective. It's welcome if it is subjective, but if we take the undergraduate students into account, maybe we have an option of giving small MCQs or 2 options test, or even a rating scale where the social construct and the human construct of the narrative can be assessed by the teacher. This kind of assessment has to be inbuilt into our undergraduate evaluation systems, into our class 11th and 12th in the evaluative systems where literary texts are taught. Here, I'd also add that the way the child approaches the text is mostly summative, because there is a trend to mug up, to see, to have get familiarized with the last year's question paper, see some of the questions and try to get an image or try to find some kind of idea about how these questions are answered. But if these paradigms are changed every time, the constructs would be more active. They will avoid passivity in the learner, and they'll also confirm the involvement of the learner in the language and the operational interfaculty indulgences which the learner can make happen. We come to an advertisement. See, we have a last two slides. The designing of a product, like we have a question there where there's a small advertisement, think charcoal, and it says design a product that suits this advertisement. And it says bamboo charcoal known for cleaning properties, wintergreen mint known to purify breath. So not spoken out, but we say for a clean mouth experience, not spoken out. Obviously, anyone who can read and comprehend this picture will say that it is for a mouth freshener or for a toothpaste. If we put options, is it a mouth freshener? Is it a toothpaste? So the element of charcoal might again ask our child to go back to the construct and say, well, charcoal cannot be, maybe not, is not a welcome element into a mouth freshener, so it has to be toothpaste. Logics are applied. Even in language, logics are applied. In assessment, logic, reasoning, interest, and straightforwardness is required. So, most of the time, the formative competencies need to be broken up. They need to be addressed very directly, and they also have to be it also has to be seen that the interconnectedness in between the competencies and skills is maintained, is sustained, so that language is learned as an integrity. The literature is appreciated in integrity. The unity is very essential. So in the next slide, when we say that preparing skills in language are softer, clearer, experiential, endeavored, and nurtured, I mean that the associates of assessment. These are the associates of assessment. In an example where we say that some character, suppose say Tom dived into the kitchen and found a spoon of sugar for himself. Now, if I say dived into the kitchen here, and I dived into the kitchen, the word dived is related to, suppose I say swimming, to fast motion, to athletics, and to thinking. All of this can happen. In this sentence, it is fast motion. This logic is analyzed in terms of the narrative that is given as the STEM. So this clearer uh, experiential experience, I mean, this involvement has to be facilitated by the teachers every time. So I think with lots of disturbance around and many interruptions, I have tried to, because of these disturbances, in fact, I got myself
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
not,
Thank you very
I
much
might
for
not have been
enhancing
very
our knowledge and
proper in my deliverance, and I
no,
might
you
not
have
have
enhanced
enjoyed
our
it,
knowledge in
but
various
still,
parts of narrative
I
techniques.
come to conclude. uh, No, it's not knowledge at all. It's not knowledge at all. I'm so sorry. There were so many interpretations, and so many interruptions, and because of that, my consistency was disturbed. I could have been better.
No,
It
ma'am.
could have
Actually, you
been
have
better,
enhanced
but
actually
however,
our knowledge and various parts of
thank you.
narrative techniques
Thank
and
you
types
so
of
much for giving this
evaluation and
opportunity.
assessment, as well as you have focused on logical and qualitative assessment, ma'am. So it was
Yes.
too good
Mm,
to us.
yes. That's something which
And
I
now
always find
I'm
missing.
inviting. uh,
Mm.
okay, and now I'm inviting all the participants for their queries. And I think there is no query.
Good evening,
So,
respected faculties. I'm Vikas Chandani,
good evening.
and I'm an assistant professor in Government Girls College, Takatpur. I have a small question from ma'am.
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Question is, uh, many of my students have a habit of watching web series and all sorts of programs that come on TV, and they often pick up slangs from those programs
Mm.
and web series.
Yes.
So, what they do is they do use words in the apt manner, but they are typically from the Western culture where slang is quite frequent. So
Right.
they come up with slangs like "my homie ain't gonna do this." So
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
should we appreciate such things, although they are grammatically incorrect, but then they are applicable, they are in use. So should we be appreciating those things? Wouldn't that affect their cognitive tendency and their ability to write formally in the future?
I won't say yes, because when we come to the learner's ability to learn second language into mainstreaming, for example, his ability to produce it in spoken and written forms with competence, then these kinds of things are woven into in spoken atmospheres, in spoken contexts, which they pick up, but they know very well that in terms of in the context of an esteemed appearance, or in a formal formal norm, a platform, they won't be able to uh, use it uh, as a with license, I should say. And other way around, if it is written, they'll themselves try to avoid this. For example, if you say we have started picking these things because we have stopped writing letters, we are on with our mobiles messages, which take these kinds of interpretations as welcome, or they have been learned as our own inbuilts, because copying and imitating Western culture has become a habit, and it's a welcome habit as such. But if we say, if we think about writing letters, which we used to do, when we wrote letters, we read as a part of audience consciousness, which always gets missing. When we wrote letters, we read it over and over again, so that any word, any sentence, any kind of deliverance does not annoy, does not make a different sense for the reader. this consciousness is very much uh, uh, I should say a learnable point which is to be cultivated in our language learning classes, in our literature classes as well. We should assure that students are able to deliver competent answers, competent language, which is not um, effectively unacceptable.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes. Because also,
And
we are
now
trying
I'm
to
inviting.
give them these skills for some kind of creative abilities. If they are writing in a newspaper, they are writing stories, they are writing some, they are writing, editing books or journals. They'll also use language which is not of this kind. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And now I'm inviting our chairperson, Dr. Nidhi Gupta ma'am. She is an assistant professor in Government GNA PG College, Bhatapara. She holds an experiences of 17 years of teaching and she has a number of degrees, MA English, MP Slate and PhD. She has published 6 research papers and have presented 23 papers. Now welcome to you, ma'am. And over to you.
Thank you, Satvir Sangat. A very good evening, everyone. At the very outset, I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Kirti Tiwari ma'am, patron iSpell CG Forum, Dr. G.A. Ghanshyam sir, founder and general secretary iSpell, Dr. Harpreet Kaur Gacha ma'am, president iSpell CG Forum, Dr. Ashna Singh ma'am, Dr. Neelu Srivastava ma'am, the coordinator of today's event. In fact, I extend my gratitude to the whole iSpell Forum for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be the chairperson of this intellectual meet. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Shishirkana Bhattacharya ma'am for her excellent and profound presentation on narratives, the pathway to constructive assessment in language and literature. Listening to Dr. Shishikarna ma'am is always a great pleasure, as she always grabs the attention of listeners by her deliberation. It was very enlightening and wonderful session. Everyone was everyone was feeling spellbound. Dr. Shishir Khanna ma'am has very efficiently discussed about importance of assessment. Assessment is one of the areas of teaching and learning process. Assessment is a continuous process, but unfortunately, it is being neglected nowadays. Ma'am has talked about nature and scope of narratives. Written narratives could be stories, accounts, fairy tales, reports, or poems. Narratives contain the experience of life. Intentions of various narrative texts have also been discussed by Bhattacharya ma'am. Descriptive narratives provide detail about setting. Viewpoint narratives provide understanding of reader's point of view. Historical narratives talk about event in chronology. They tell about culture, ethics of a particular period. Ma'am talked about author's intention and reader's interpretation. There are linear narratives and non-linear narratives. Linear narratives use the same sequence of events in which they take place, while non-linear narratives may take place in dreams, flashback, or so. They do not follow the same order. So, as in our country, India, English is not the primary language of most of the students. We have to follow various methods for English language teaching. Optimal learning in constructivism is possible through assessment. Man has told about information construct and knowledge construct also. Ma'am discussed what is the scope for using narratives in assessment. The assessment of language can be done by assessing passive skills like listening and reading, productive skills like speaking and writing, emergent skills like correlation. Narratives are valuable not only for the assessment of language but for science also. In science, content based learning, concept verification, sequence, and conceptualization can be assessed through narratives. Ma'am, we totally agree with you that criteria of assessment has to be enlarged every time. Appreciation leads to vocabulary building, creativity. We have to go back to text in order to enrich the child's language. Construct would make the learners more active. Ma'am, through your presentation, we came to know that tethering skills in language are softer, clearer, experiential, and endeavored as well as nurtured. So, a narrative is a form of writing that tells a story. Narratives can be essays, fairy tales, movies, and jokes. There are five elements of narratives: plot, setting, character, conflict, and theme. Theory of narratives started with Aristotle and Homer. Narrative method is very old. The origin of this word is the Latin adjective narrativus, from narrare to tell, from narrus, knowing. It is related to our English verb know. Narrative is one of the four classical rhetorical modes that writers use to present information. The others include exposition, argument, and description. Narrative helps to capture attitudes, perceptions, and connections that cannot be expressed when asked directly. We are living in the era of technology, and in this era, not a single method would be sufficient and effective in teaching, learning, and evaluation. Thus, narrative can be one of the most effective methods of assessment in language as well as literature. Both traditional and digital narrative techniques can be employed as successful tools to assessment. Narrative is really a pathway to assess aspects of children's oral and written language development, such as vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, and concentration. Through narrative, child's ability to think symbolically and metaphorically can also be judged. All this has been presented very beautifully and wonderfully with the help of various stories and examples by Dr. Bhattacharya ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So here I conclude my point. Thank you very much for patience listening.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And now, on behalf of the organizing team, it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. Our hearts fills with lots of gratitude and respect for our distinguished speaker for not only sparing their invaluable time for us to grace
Excuse
this
me,
occasion, but also
excuse me, Satyaveer. Excuse me, please.
yes, ma'am.
We have to
Yes, ma'am.
honor the guests with the certificates. Before that, doesn't matter. And Nurul, could you please display the certificates? And may I invite the convener of the forum, Dr. Archana Singh ma'am, to do the honors of presenting the token of appreciation to our guests. Dr. Archana ma'am, please. And Nurul, could you please?
Yes, ma'am. So, thank you very much, Dr. Shishirkana Bhattacharya, ma'am. Madam has spoken on narratives.
Thank you so
Pathway
much.
to constructive
in language. So, ma'am, it's a token of appreciation for you. Please accept it.
Thank you.
And thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
so
being
much,
here on
ma'am.
the platform.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to have been with you. I have been interrupted a lot, many times, so I was not very consistent. I'm sorry about that. My apologies.
It was a technical fault, ma'am, not on your part. And it was our privilege to hear you, ma'am.
Make sure that some of the things that you
Indeed,
come.
it is our privilege that you are here on the platform of high school. And overall, it was very good.
No, it made me nervous actually.
It's a great honor to have you here, ma'am. It's a great honor to have you here.
And the second certificate goes to Dr. Nidhi Gupta ma'am. Dr. Nidhi Gupta ma'am has chaired the session. So thank you very much, ma'am, for being there. You have not only summed up the lectures by Dr.
And get introduced to so many of
thank you
the
so much.
learners on this.
Thank you, ma'am, for the certificate. As it was my first attempt, I could not present myself very well. Next time I will try to.
You were very well. You have presented everything very well.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
It
ma'am.
was perfect, ma'am. It was perfect.
Thank
You
you, ma'am.
covered the whole lecture of ma'am.
Thank you,
Very
ma'am.
decent.
And madam, you have not only covered, but you have also put in your own remarks.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
it was very nice. The third one is this Satyaveer Singh Rathod. Still needs young person like.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So because you so really
Thank you, Dr. Nidhi. I mean, this is
so thank you very much, Satyaveer Singh Rathod. God bless you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity.
And the last certificate goes to the coordinator, the melodious singer of our forum, Dr. Srivastava. And ma'am, really you have coordinated very well, and you have to coordinate one more session. So thank you very much, ma'am.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Dr. Archana. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At last, I wish to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Shishikana Bhattacharya ma'am, that she spared her time from her busy schedule. She had to go somewhere at a very important occasion of her family, but she spared her precious time for us. And thank you, ma'am, for such a thought-provoking presentation, and which is very, very relevant for all of us as faculty members. I also wish to thank all the dignitaries and patron, Dr. Kirti Tiwari ma'am, the founder of ISQL, Dr. Ghanshyam sir, president of this forum, Dr. Harpreet Kaur Garcha ma'am, convener of the forum, Dr. Archana Singh, and all the participants who have gathered together here and be a part of, facilitate to elevate. So thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You may conclude, Satyaveer. You may conclude now.
Yes, ma'am.
You may conclude, yeah.
Yes, I'm checking.
Yeah. Satyavi, please, you could conclude, Hannah. You could give your concluding remark now. You could continue with what you were doing. Yeah. Okay. Satyavi, please switch on your video. Satyavi.
Satyavir, yeah.
Rathorji, I think please you're unmuted.
Satyavir, you are not audible, better.
Maybe some technical glitch because he's speaking and he's unmuted also.
Yes, he is not muted. Yeah.
Yes, Neelu ma'am, you can conclude then if
Yes.
he's not audible. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. So, with my heartfelt gratitude to all the participants here, now I conclude this session for today, and we'll meet tomorrow and the next week also. So, till then, have a great time. Thanks to all.